On today's show, we break down the Leafs' loss to Buffalo, prompting a lineup shakeup from Sheldon Keefe at practice for tonight's game against Tampa. We'll fill you in on the latest there and preview that matchup with their three keys to victory. All that more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Dave. A weird weekend if you're a Leafs fan. They fall 6-4 to the Buffalo Sabres on home ice despite Auston Matthews collecting another hat trick on the young season. But that's now, 4 straight losses for Toronto. There's just some concerns that are starting to creep up, and the fan base not loving the product they're seeing out there on the ice.
Or should they? It's been abysmal, especially at home. Like, road games are tough, but they play better on the road than they have at home. And that, to me, is quite disgusting.
Yeah, you score 4 goals on home ice, your superstar gets a hat trick, you should win that game.
Yes.
You should 1,000% be able to win that game.
Yeah, and it wasn't like Devin Levi was lights out in this game.
Not even close.
4 goals. You should be able to hold the Buffalo Sabres also to less than 5 goals.
Who I might add were on the second night of a back-to-back as well, just to kind of put a little salt in the wound.
Dylan Cousins wasn't playing because he was hurt in this game as well.
Yeah.
He's a good player for them. And it's the same old story for this team. It's getting tiresome. I'm getting tired, Mike. I don't want to be tired with this team.
So here's the thing. Typically, the narrative is out there now that, okay, Toronto, they get off to a slow start every year. This has kind of been the case since Sheldon Keefe took over. This has always been a bit of a slow October. Marner takes a bit to get going, but then once he heats up, things start to change, and this team starts to go off on a massive winning streak, and they usually have the best November. The last 3 years, they've had the best win percentage in November. But so far, 0 for 2 now here in November. So that's not great. Obviously, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, if that's supposed to be your bread and butter to start the season off, not winning games in November. But yeah, I think that when you talk about the game, and there are some good things that you could pull from it, I suppose. So let's get to the good, the bad, the ugly, and let's talk about some of the good things. Because you got production from the top line. They carried that production that they had in Buffalo or in Boston, and they carried it into this game against the Sabres, right? You had Mitch Marner scored on a breakaway to open the scoring. He ended up with 4 points. You had Matthews with another hat trick on the season. So, you're getting some production from your big boys, and that's ultimately what this team needs. They just need other people to start producing now.
Yeah, you get a Matthews' 3rd hat trick of the season, all of them coming at home. He's one that wants to score goals at Scotiabank Arena right now.
Yeah.
And it's how they were scoring the goals too, right? It wasn't through the power play. Remember, we were talking about how he was struggling to score a bit at 5-on-5. I think he heard that one. And so he decided, okay, I'll score on 5-on-5. I'll show you guys. And he's been doing that. So yeah, you get a hat trick from Auston Matthews. That's important. Mitch Marner also scores too, right? He's the one that's been needing to get the goals going. He's starting to feel it a little bit offensively. So you at least got that going for yourself, because sometimes when the Leafs are losing or on these losing streaks, it's because their top players aren't producing, and that's not the reason why they're losing right now.
100%. And I think they're also like 68 or 69% in the faceoff draws. So after a tough night in Boston, they bounce back in the dot with a very strong night in the faceoff circle. So that was another thing that is a positive going forward, because that's part of the Leafs game, right? They want to play a possession game, and if you to establish possession, the easiest way to do that, win the faceoff and get the puck. So good to see that happen against Buffalo. There's plenty more bad and ugly though in this game, so let's get to those. What was something that was bad for you from this game out of the Maple Leafs?
Oh, I mean, the bad, probably that I'm gonna probably put that Tage Thompson goal where Marner decides to pass it to him.
Yeah, tough. The short-handed goal.
It wasn't like you.
I think Mitch Marner called it a bleep show, I believe was his word for that play.
Looks like one too, but like those are the goals that like that were backbreakers. You get momentum. Like every time the Leafs tied, the Sabres were right back and they score. Right, I think Matthews scores a goal. There's Jeff Skinner left open to just wire one.
That one for me was the worst. Like that was my bad. And it's not the fact that you allow, a goal right after you tie it up. Like, yes, those response goals are tough. You hate giving those up. But for me, this is going on to Sheldon Keefe, this one here. Why the hell are you sending your fourth line out after tying it 3-3 against Jeff Skinner and against like that team's top play? Like, it made no sense what Sheldon Keefe did coming off of that goal. You want to try and send out another offensively driven line to try and keep that momentum, get the puck back, get it in the offensive end, and see if you can capitalize and score a couple of goals. Like Devin Levi is a very young goaltender. Maybe you can shake him if you score a couple of quick ones on him. But no, instead, Keefe decides to roll out the fourth line, and just like has been happening all season long, they get scored on, and all of a sudden that you finally tie the game up, and now you're trailing 4-3 again. And it was just such a brutal decision by Sheldon Keefe. Brutal decision.
It's like the worst part about that too is that's the play that got Lajoie taken out. He was out of the game because he let that mistake. He let Skinner get by him, but Sheldon Keefe was the one that put him in that situation too. Like it was a double-edged sword in a kind of way there. And so, yeah, like you can't allow the other team to get momentum after you have a pretty emotional goal, right? Like Auston Matthews was fired up. Usually you try to get your good players on the ice after a goal. And I absolutely hate, when teams decide, and Keith does this many times. All right, fourth line, we're going to get you up there because we got some momentum now.
But last year, the fourth line was at least
defensively
responsible. Like, they were defensively responsible, and actually often we're able to translate that into at least established, ozone possession time. That hasn't been the case this year. They are consistently chasing around the puck in their own end. I mean, we don't need to go into how badly this fourth line needs a shakeup, and it is getting a shakeup. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the views from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without those hidden fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And they're obsessed with finding you the best way to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. And even an hour after it starts, it's the place to find last-minute seats. With zone deals, you pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. But I do want to ask you, Dave, because we haven't really touched on it on the show yet. Maybe this is our chance to get into it just for a quick moment here. But like, there's been a lot of rhetoric around the fan base kind of being at its wits end with Sheldon Keefe as the head coach of this Toronto Maple Leafs team. It was kind of coming in after that Boston game, and then it filtered in after this loss to the Buffalo Sabres. It continued. Like I sent out a tweet, I think on Friday, just asking people like, hey, there seems to be a lot of, traction around Leafs Nation wanting to get rid of Sheldon Keefe. And I was curious, well, who would you guys prefer coach over Sheldon? And I got a long list of names. It was
I
insane.
saw those names.
Long list of names.
Bruce Boudreau. Like, are people being serious?
Oh, I know. Brucey Boudreau, they're throwing out there.
But go look at what happened in Vancouver. Go look at the Vancouver Canucks right now, the team that got rid of Bruce Boudreau and are now the best team in Canada, playing for Rick Tocchet right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most people though just said like Guy Boucher take over, like that. That was most people. There was a lot of Bruce Boudreau. I would say that was number two.
A lot of Gerard Gallant, which no,
lots of Gerard Gallant. Who again, Gerard Gallant, like outside of taking Vegas to the Cup final in his first year. I mean, he's had success, but he's just never been able to actually finish the job.
No.
You know what I mean? Like he's always the bridesmaid's never a bride. But I am curious, like where are you when it comes to Sheldon Keefe as the coach of this team? Like, you think that he's safe for a little bit more here? Like, how much longer of a leash do you think he has?
I think he's going to have a bit more of a leash, but at the same time, if I'm him, I'm not feeling comfortable right now just because, the whole team, like the team as a whole, looks discombobulated. There's something not working right here. It pains me to see, when the Leafs are tied in a game, they have to feel like they have to hold on to the lead to go to overtime. Or defensively, I understand that the players he has to work with aren't great, but teams who have far less find ways to be a little more responsibly defensively. And this is nothing new. I know that they've made strides under Sheldon Keefe. I'm not saying they've always been a bad defensive team, but he's clearly struggling with the personnel he has right now.
Well, yeah, he is, and he's struggling to try and find out ways to get the best of Tyler Bertuzzi, get the most out of Max Domi, get the most out of John Klingberg and Ryan Reeves, and everybody here. Even technically, Nyes is still very new to this team, and you got to figure out the way to best deploy him. And again, he's trying. Like this guy's throwing lines in a blender every single game, and some people think that could be a problem too. Like let these guys get a couple of games under their belt and work through some of the kinks. Don't be so quick to trigger to get, take someone off of a line or put some, the blender doesn't need to come out at every period, essentially, is what people are saying.
Well, I'll say two things to that. One, you'll hear Max Domi kind of talk about, like, if you're getting concerned after 10 games, then you shouldn't probably be in the NHL, right? If you're like getting concerned about you haven't done anything after 10 games. Like, I get that part. But what really irks me is it's the coach's job to figure out how to put his players in the best positions to succeed. It's not hard to get Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and Willie Nylander going. That's not really usually the work for the coach. It's getting the rest of the team to be a cohesive unit, and that's where Sheldon Keefe is failing right now. That's on him, right? Yes, players have to produce, players have to perform, but he even said, we gave Tyler Bertuzzi a simple thing to do, and he couldn't do it. The coach has to take some blame for that. It can't all be on the player because clearly what you asked him to do maybe wasn't what he should be doing.
Well, if it's almost like a chicken or the egg type of conversation. It's like the coach, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Like that's Sheldon Keefe saying, look, this is the message that we have. This is the game plan. This is what you need to do in order to, be successful. And if they're not willing to do that, or they don't execute the way that, it's intended to, I mean, what's Sheldon Keefe supposed to do? Or if the message is just completely in one ear out the other, what's that supposed to do? And that's what happened with Babcock at the end of his tenure, where it's like the message isn't getting through. And sometimes that's when the coaching conversation does come into play, where it's like the message isn't getting through, and guys aren't playing hard for you. Maybe that's when you do something. I don't think we're there yet. Let me say that. I do not think we're there yet. I still think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach, and I think Sheldon Keefe has good concepts and ideas and systems. I just think he needs to figure out, to your point, how to get these other guys involved. Like, most of these players have been in this program for a while, so they know what's going on. These new players, they're new here, right? And they play a different style. And I wonder if that's too something that's kind of like we maybe overlooked a little bit earlier this offseason, when they brought in guys with snot, and they brought in these other players who, yes, more offensively driven, and they should provide more secondary offense and depth. They don't have to rely on just the top four players. But the problem is, offense is only 50% of the game, 40% of the game if you include special teams, obviously 40-40-20. But that's, I think maybe there's a bit of an identity crisis here with Toronto, where some of these new guys and even Sheldon Keefe just not really sure what they're doing, what they're supposed to be. Like last year, that fourth line had an identity. Like, that was a line that could defend, they could forecheck, there was a bit of speed there. What the hell has this fourth line got? Nothing, because you got a mismatch of guys and Ryan Reeves, who's out there doing whatever, and they can't really get anything going, right? Pontus Holmberg's really struggling with Ryan Reeves and Noah Gregor on his wings, like, just can't really get anything going, right? There's just not a lot of cohesiveness, to your point. I think you look at the third line too, like, that's typically a defensive line. Max Domi's not a defensive player. Sorry to break it to you. So why he's being deployed in that kind of way is makes you scratch your head a little bit. But it's what Sheldon Keefe has. He's got to try and force these dudes into certain roles, and it's taking a little bit longer than maybe we wanted to happen. But I'm assuming that there will be a decently long leash. I don't think he gets fired in the year 2023, even if they are like 500 by American Thanksgiving, which is typically like that time where things start to happen. I still think that he'll get an opportunity to right the ship here. Maybe Christmas time, if they're still like 500 and they're not seeing any signs, then maybe that's you might want to do something there to shake things up. But I'm not quite on the fire Keefe train just yet, but he certainly shouldn't be comfortable. I'd say it's a warm seat right now for Sheldon. It's not hot yet, but it's definitely warm.
Yeah, and it should be. Like, the coach, like, we knew that going into this year, his position wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
There's no, like, they can say what they want. Brad Chilton can say what he wants. It was already being said during the offseason, like, he shouldn't feel 100% safe with his spot right now. So
yeah, like, I mean, just because he signed an extension doesn't mean anything. Like, it really
had like a bazillion years left on his deal, but when he got fired, don't think the Leafs are afraid to pull the trigger on on a firing because of how much contract the coach has left.
Yeah, like, Babcock's contract just came off the books this season. All right, really quickly, Dave, the ugly, because we ended up going on tangent about Sheldon Keefe there during the good, the bad, the ugly. But the ugly for me, like, John Klingberg just had an ugly game. And again, we're going back to the new guys who came in, and they're still trying to figure out how to play and what positions and what role they should be in. But I tell you, John Klingberg should not be playing 25 minutes a night. Played 25 minutes and 4 seconds. I understand they're in a position where injuries are starting to really pile up here, right? There's no Jake McCabe. There was no Timothy Liljegren, who plays the right side. And then, like Lajoie, you weren't going to go and play him 20 minutes a night. So out of necessity, you kind of end up playing Klingberg a lot, plays on the top power play, which also, picks up, they get like 6 minutes in power play time. But a -3, Dave, in this game, registered just one shot on goal at 5-on-5, 21% expected goals. He was outshot 14-5 when on the ice, gave up 12 scoring chances, 7 of which being of the high danger variety. And he's a dude right now when it comes to um, high danger chances given up per 60 minutes. He's in the top 12. Like he's just consistently giving up high grade scoring chances. And this is a dude who plays over 20 minutes a night for Toronto. That can't be happening. He's got to figure it out. He has to figure it out.
Yeah, he has to, because it's on him, right? Like he's a guy that's playing a significant role. Probably again, too much of a significant role, but you're a defenseman, right? You're like defense is part of your role. It's part of your title.
He should. I don't know if he knows that. That's the problem.
Yeah, and like not only is he costing the Leafs in a big way, he's costing himself. Like this is a contract year for this guy. Ain't no team gonna be
Dave. It was a contract year last year, and he was this bad. Like that's the thing.
That's the problem.
I think people forgot how poor John Klingberg was last season, and everyone just assumed, oh, Klingberg, the guy in Dallas who's a 50-point defenseman, number one guy, played 25 plus minutes, and like everyone thought that was the Klingberg that was coming to Toronto. That's not the case. This dude fell off a cliff last year, and he just continues to tumble. But he still ended up with a $4 million contract from Toronto after playing so poor last year. I think he had like a 44% expected goals last season, deployed in a very offensively driven role. I know he played with Anaheim, but even when he was with Minnesota, it wasn't great after he got traded at the deadline. So, I just don't think he's a very good defenseman anymore. Like the last 2 seasons, he's really been in a decline. And I think that it's just going to continue, to be quite honest with you, which is not good news for Toronto. He certainly is not a guy who you can afford to be playing 25 minutes a night. That's for certainty. What was ugly for you?
I mean, it was the lack of defensive effort, but actually more ugly is Sheldon Keefe says, they look like a tired blue line out there. Well, guess what? Who tells them how many minutes they play a night, Sheldon?
Yeah.
But I understand that he's dealing with 2 guys out of the lineup that are regulars. Find ways to make it work, man. I like John Klingberg played too much. Mark Giordano played too much. Morgan Riley played too much. You have to roll with 6 guys. Otherwise, you can't complain that your other guys are tired. I'm sorry, but that was like when I heard that, I said that's a stupid comment, because these guys aren't throwing themselves over the boards without your permission. It's on the coaching staff to dictate how many minutes a guys play. They got the analytics telling them, all right, this is how long their shifts are. This is how long they've played through each period. It's on the coaching staff in that regard. And the worst thing to do when your defense is struggling is to burden them with a heavy workload.
Yeah, I know. But, injuries play a role, and it kind of changes, what your game plan's going to be, right? Like, I think the old Mike Tyson is your game plan changes the second you get punched in the mouth. And, the Leafs, they've gotten punched in the mouth by a couple of big injuries, and it's kind of changed how they've had to go about some things so far this season. But we'll leave this game in the rear, as I'm sure the Maple Leafs want to do. Let's come back and get into tonight's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll tell you guys about all of the changes that have been made to this struggling lineup as they try to erase a 4-game losing streak. And before we get into all that, let me tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors, and that's our good friends over at FanDuel. Score early this NHL season with FanDuel. It's North America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet on the NFL. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Dave, I'm taking a look at tomorrow's game right now just to see what the line is. Maple Leafs favored on the money line at -152. The over-under leaning towards the over of 6.5. So looks like the books might be expecting a bit of a high scoring affair, but Toronto should be able to win that game. You can make those wagers if you like. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and kick off the NHL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. All right, so Leafs Lightning Part 2. Second matchup between these two teams so far this season. Toronto beating the Bolts a couple of weeks back, 4-3 overtime win. That was that big comeback effort where Matthew Knies came to life with a couple of goals. Probably also Max Domi's biggest game. But they're currently marred in a 4-game losing streak. That is something that the Leafs certainly did not anticipate being in, and they want to get themselves out of it as soon as possible. So, as you know, Coach Sheldon Keefe likes to do, likes to put the lines in a blender, and he's done it once again going into tonight's game. So, why don't we pull up the lineup for today, what we saw in practice, the expected lines for tonight's game against the Lightning. So Matthew Knies moving up to the top line with Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner, Bertuzzi, Tavares, and Nylander on the second line. Max Domi moving into the center of the ice with Holmberg and Yarncroc as his wingers, and then Kampf back down to the fourth line, Noah Gregor and Ryan Reeves as his wingers there. You got Riley Brody. Still unsure what the defense is going to look like. McCabe did return to practice today, but Giordano was not at practice for a maintenance day, a rest day, as it was, as we were told by Sheldon Keefe. So unsure what the defense will officially look like. But McCabe was practicing Klingberg today, and then Lagesson with Simon Benoit and Max Lajoie. So what do you make of, we'll start up front, which is, I guess, more of the intriguing things about the switch up here. What do you make of Matthew Knies, first of all, being bumped up to the top line?
Yeah, I think Matthew Knies needs to be playing in the top 6. Like, I watch him play, and he should be, I think, someone that can help. Well, I mean, these guys aren't having an issue scoring, but I think he can bring a bit of that intensity that I think we need to see in the top 6. And playing with Marner and Matthews, I think, will help unlock a little bit more of his offensive potential as well, because I think his style suits Marner and Matthews, right? We've been talking about how they've been revolving guys on left wing. First it was Bertuzzi, then it was Yarncroc. Now I think Matthew Knies, we saw in the playoffs, that trio does work well. I do want to see Matthew Knies play a little more physically. Like, he's an aggressive player, but we haven't really seen him lay hits. I actually had one of our viewers reach out to me and kind of say, yeah, I think these guys, I think Matthew Knies, when I watched him in college, was more of a physical guy, could hit a bit, you could stand to hit a bit more. So I think,
well, he's a big dude, like 6'3", 215, big dude.
Yeah, he should be using that to his advantage a bit more. So, like Bertuzzi, they've tried him with Tavares and Nylander. I want to see them try to get that going. He's got it going. The third line, I don't mind Max Domi there, because clearly Yarncroc's not going to play center, and Holmberg just can't do it right now. And Domi
could. At least Yarncroc could, but
they just don't. This is something they never really wanted to try, unfortunately. I think Domi, obviously, being good at the faceoffs, he brings that speed element down the middle. Maybe that gets him going offensively a little bit too. He did say that when you play in the center, that kind of unlocks things offensively a bit. We'll see.
Yeah. I have a quote here from Sheldon Keefe about putting Domi into the middle of the ice. So Keefe said, quote, "For us, it's seeing if getting the puck in the middle of the ice offensively can help push that line. Obviously, having a little more offensive push to the line itself and getting him unlocked as an offensive driver of the group would be an important thing for us. So it's really about that in response to having Domi playing and moving to the center ice position."
Yeah, I do think that they you did say that usually the third line is your more defensively responsible line, but I do think you also need to show that you're going to be a threat offensively, right? You're not going to be. You have to have like the bottom 6 just hasn't brought the offense. They have to, right? They can't just be expected to. Yeah, you throw them out in defensive situations. That's what they're main title is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen with other teams playing against the Leafs, the bottom six finds ways to be dangerous by having that offensive instinct as well. And I think Domi will hopefully start to bring more of it because they need it.
Yeah. I still like I'm looking at the 4 groupings, and for the life of me, I'm like, who is going to be like the matchup line? Like, who are you sending against Kucherov and Point? Like, who's gonna go and shut those guys down? They've spread everyone else out, and they don't really have a defensive. It's so bizarre. We knew this was the case. They decided that they were going to add so much more offense this offseason and toughness, I suppose, where they did that at the expense of just solid defensive play. Like, flat out, that seems to be what's kind of gone on here with this team. And through the first 10 games, very evident that that's exactly what's happened. Again, is this just simply trying to learn the systems and the players just trying to mesh and figure things out potentially? I could see in 10, 15 games, maybe things look a little different, look better. But so far, I still am just searching, saying who's the shutdown line. They don't really have a matchup line out there. Like Marner, Matthews, and Nyes, I guess. Like that to me is probably the most defensively responsible line out there. Marner, Matthews, and Nyes. But you would think you would want them having a lot of ozone time, ozone face-offs. But I don't know. I'm not the coach. I don't get paid millions of dollars to coach this team. Defensively, Jake McCabe, a game time decision, I guess, is probably what he's going to be at this point. He did practice today alongside John Klingberg. Puke, gross. If that is once again going to be a pairing. But we'll see what ends up happening there if he does play tonight. Giordano was not at practice, but is expected to play. It was considered a maintenance day for him. Unsure who the starter in net is going to be. I don't believe he said who was going to start, but I would imagine they go back to Samsonov.
Yeah, I think so. It's a rotation.
It's so funny. It's so funny how things change within a week and a half, right? Within 2 weeks. Like everyone was in our mentions and on the comment section. No, there's no competition. There's no controversy. Wall's the guy. Wall's the guy. Is Wall the guy still? Is he still the guy after a couple of leaky games here? I'm just asking.
But at the same time, one game from Samsonov doesn't change the fact that he hasn't been great.
No. And I've always said it's still a 1A, 1B type of thing here, but Wall was never the guy after 3 starts.
We're asking these goalies to be Band-Aids for this blue line. Unfortunately, they don't need Band-Aids. They need like full out gauze wrapping all over these massive that need stitches, not Band-Aids.
Yeah, stitches, gauze, and then stitches. That's what they need. All right, Dave. 3 keys to victory tonight. What is one of the keys Toronto needs to do to make sure they come away with the full 2 points here against the Lightning?
Well, you're going to have to figure out a way to stop this Tampa offense because they lit up the Senators for 6 goals.
Yeah, they did. Who, though? Who, Dave? Who's going to stop that offense?
That's the thing. You got to figure out. Braden Point had a hat trick. Kucherov had 5 points. That's fun.
Wow.
That's gonna be fun. Now, granted, the Senators were not very good, and they're also dealing with injuries, and their goaltending was shaky. But Tampa smells blood right now in the Atlantic, and they're gonna feast.
Yeah. So this goes to it. One of my keys for tonight is battling for the middle of the ice. I think Toronto, you look at the way that they have to defend tonight. They have to make sure they keep pucks out of the middle of the ice. I was looking at what's her name? Megan Chayka from she's the owner of Stathletes and does some analytic work with TSN. And she put out some statistics earlier today I saw on Twitter. And at the top of a lot of these like playmaking stats, I guess we'll say. So it's like passes into the slot, passes across the ice, those types of plays. Kucherov was number one in those plays made in the NHL. So taking away that, not allowing Kucherov to just sauce pucks across the ice for his teammates and not allowing him to get pucks into those areas, into those high danger areas inside the house. I think that needs to be a key. Make sure that you win the middle ice. You don't allow guys getting in there first and foremost if you can, which is tough to do against Tampa. But when pucks are getting funneled towards there or through there, be active with those sticks, knock them down, send them away. That's going to be a key, I think, to stopping this Tampa Bay offense. They like to do a lot of puck movement. They're quick. They're fast with it. Stop it once it's going through the ice, through the middle of the ice there. That's one key for me. What's another for you?
Well, I mean, as good as the offense has been for the Lightning, they're still letting in a lot of goals. They don't like were up in that game, and the Senators were making a bit of a comeback. They lost to the Blue Jackets. I think Erica Branson scored in that game.
He did.
They also lost to the Kraken. They've been allowing 4 or more goals in the last 3 games, which means their goaltending hasn't exactly been great. And in that game, the Leafs came back. They found a bit of a book on Johansson. Now, I don't know if Johansson is going to be the one playing in this game, most likely, but get the puck up on this guy, right? You got to get the shots up high. Nice, both goals. He said, my goal was to raise it. Right. Yeah. You got the book is kind of out on the goaltending a bit for the Lightning. Take advantage of the fact that you're going to have some of these games without Andre Vasilevsky. You pick up these wins when they're available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a team defensively where I'm looking at it right now. They either give up 3+ goals a game or they get shutouts. There's no in between when it comes to their games so far. Like their last 4 games here. We'll look at their last 6 games. They've given up 4. They've given up 4. They've given up 4. Shutout. Given up 4. Like it's either they're going to allow 4 goals against, or they're just going to completely shut you out and dominate. I don't see that one happening against Toronto. So potentially over 3.5 total Leafs goals could be a little wager you might want to throw down tonight. But yeah, so definitely take advantage offensively, and I mean they're allowing a lot of shots on goal. I think I was looking, and they're 4th in the NHL. They allow 34 shots. 34 shots a night, which is 28th. Yeah, 28th in the NHL, which would be like 4th or 5th most that they allow. So definitely make sure if you're Toronto, keep funneling stuff to the net, and good things should be able to happen for you. My last key for tonight as well is make sure that you are winning the special teams battle, right? Like I think special teams going to come in clutch. Like these two teams, despite Vasilevsky being gone, like this is still a rivalry game. It's going to be played hard. It's going to be played tight. And I think special teams will be a factor, whether it's, a late power play goal or whatever it may be. Tampa, they got a solid power play, 3rd in the NHL, 30% success rate. The Leafs penalty kill, not anywhere near being 3rd in the NHL, 24th in the league, and they're killing off just 75%. So they got to step up for sure, and then obviously convert when they get their opportunities. I think special teams is a big, could be, where the advantage goes with these two teams. So for me, special teams is another key. One last one from you, Dave, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Don't beat yourselves. It's like the Leafs have been beating themselves far too often because the team just attack them and they go into this retreat mode.
Yeah.
And when they get into that retreat mode, they put themselves in bad positions and they get beat far too often, right? Whether it's a bad pinch, whether it's, you're taking a shot from the point and it goes off a guy's skate and you let him go to the empty net and score. I'm pointing to maybe someone named John Klingberg.
Oh,
right.
Did that happen? Is that a play that happened recently? I don't. It just seems like a vivid memory here. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe
so don't do that.
When you're on the power play and if Nikita Kucherov's on the ice or Braden Point, don't pass it into their skates. Get it to your own place.
Also, Mitch Marner, too, by the way. If you're trying a little nifty behind the back pass thing, make sure you get it to your player, not, Nick Paul or Braden Point, who will definitely be on you like wet on rice. Yeah, just a couple of couple of keys for those two individuals.
If you're going to lose to a team, let them work for it a little bit. Don't give it to them.
Yeah. And look, this is a team too, and this is why when we say like make sure that they convert on these opportunities, Tampa's been terrible defensively. Like we talked about this originally when the injury came to Vasilevsky. It was like you look at expected goals last year, Tampa was very much middle of the pack. Like that guy had saved 25 goals above expectation last year. You put in a below average goaltender like Jonas Johansson or Thomas Tompkins or whatever the hell his name is, Matt Tompkins. It's not going to go pretty for this team. And that's exactly been the case. They're sixth in the NHL in expected goals against right now. So, or they're giving up the sixth most expected goals per game. So Toronto, if they can make sure that they are generating the chances that they typically have been doing and have had a, really solid numbers in that regard, the underlying numbers have been there. They should be able to win this game hands down. They're just the better team, flat out. The Leafs are the better team right now with the Lightning without Andrei Vasilevsky and a very weak defensive unit. They just flat out are. They don't always show it though. They get amnesia and they forget. And then they randomly remember for 2 minutes, tie a game, and sometimes they win it, sometimes they lose it. But hopefully tonight can be the first 60-minute effort because they've yet to do one. Yeah. All right, buddy. Let's call that one a show. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like if you enjoyed this video. That'd be greatly appreciated. Leave us a comment down below too. What are your thoughts on the Sheldon Keefe situation? Are you Team Keefe? You think he should be given a longer leash? Or are you done? Do they need a new voice? Is that what Toronto needs to get back in to the win column and going in the right direction? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right, we'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll recap Leafs Bolts. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.